Hello everyone, Kurt Holfeder here, and welcome back to another episode from Holfeder Labs. Today we continue on with Fiore's sword and two-hand section, and we're going to start taking a look at each of the individual posta and guardia, as they are the same, that he prescribes throughout the manuscript. Now, a big part about this right here is that, first and foremost, before we didn't talk about it in other videos, but a thing that I think actually makes this quite interesting is how Fiore grips the sword. Part of that comes down to, you'll see throughout the manuscript, he's constantly always has his hand in a way that he's covering whatever the end looks like, whether it's a disc or whether it's a pear shape or a wine stop, whatever you want to talk about. And then he has the other hand on top of the sword. This is a big part right here that I think adds to what Fiore is trying to say to us within the manuscript of why you have the three categories under the two columns of posta and guardia that make everything very interesting. And the Tutta Porta di Ferro, I think, is also going to shed some light into that just because of how the motions and everything else kind of works together. So with that being the case here, we're going to start taking a look here as far as what the Tutta Porta di Ferro has to offer us and see how all the foundations from Apprezzare all the way to present go hand in hand. So let's take a look.
So this is the first of the 12 positions in which we talk about for Fiore's spada e due mani, so his sword in two hands. And the one that is started off with in the Getty is the Tutta Porta di Ferro. Now, a couple things about this that is very important to note is that Tutta Porta di Ferro, to me, is a continuation of a concept that he has been sharing the entire time when it comes down to with an Apprezzare, dagger, and now we're going into the sword. I actually personally think that there's a way that he is an unspoken with his sword in one hand concept as well, where you see the sword down to the side. Regardless, the shape of this position is a continuous that we see crossed within the manual. So the important part about this right here that's interesting about the Tutta Porta di Ferro is that, once again, if we assume the Apprezzare position, I'm going to hold the sword in my hand here. If I assume that position of Apprezzare, where my hands are down to the side, this is what it looks like, okay? And for the concept of us having, for when it comes down to the positions of all that he has within Apprezzare, it is my estimation that we are looking at a continuation where, essentially, of all the positions of Apprezzare, you are adding tools of war to it, and how you grip to those things and how you utilize different turns of the feet and of the sword, it changes the demographic. With that being the case here, that's the premise that we're going to be talking about here for all the posta when it comes down to the sword in two hands. Tutta Porta di Ferro itself, though, is relatively easy because I can stand like this, and I am in now Porta di Ferro when it comes down to Apprezzare. We also know that this right here is the position which Fiore tells us is also Porta di Ferro single within dagger. We have doubled, and then we have crossed. Within those Tutta Porta di Ferro concepts, the structure is all within this space right here. So this opening concept. So my hands are right here in some form or fashion. I'm in that opening space. When I hold the sword in two hands to this is where, again, we have the assumption, once again, my hands are like this, but I've connected it, my hands become into this type of a shape. Now, whether or not you believe it is a flat blade forward or an edge forward, personally, it doesn't really say anything in regards to this, and the image just kind of shows what it has. That right there is an important part about this right here, is that essentially by being in this position right here, this Tutta Porta di Ferro, this allows for a lot of projections that can come out of it all, and it costs next to nothing to be able to utilize to hold it against somebody here within power and positioning. Something that is very interesting about this position right here is that Fiore says that this is a great position right here that has its own exchanges of thrust and its blows of its own. On top of that, it also has the ability, it says that it will parry, then pass and close, and that it can break, bind, and it can break thrust to the ground, exchange them, and perform other concepts of that order. Now that's very interesting and important to notice because essentially this creates a very good combat posture that is reliably, does not cost a lot, and it also gives us power because we are in that pulsative arc of being able to project a threat outwards with it. Again, from this position here, I have a lot I have available to me. So let's talk about this right here, about how I can move around. It's relatively easy. Again, my strenuous stance is not necessarily affected that much. And I have it in a position right here where I can project, I can retract, I can just crest, I can retourner into different positions. I have lots of options here that are available because it costs next to nothing to be into this position. And again, it's a great position to wait in, to spring out, and to strike in. Again, that is a concept that's already been talked about back in the obversory section of the manuscript. So let's talk about this with the sword. How can we start exchanging thrust with this? We're going to get to more of the exchanging thrust and breaking thrust later on in the manual, but for right now we're going to talk about, obviously, this kind of action is your thrusting action that goes in towards an opponent. And if this is my line, I can come across with this using a false edge strike. So I'm utilizing volta stabile with my hands to turn over and just kind of thrust. That allows me to cover along this side right here. So if I have somebody that's thrusting in, I might shift across the way right here and exchange the thrust onto a different side. So it's just me going into this here, shooting up and thrusting in. I have a crossing right here which allows the cross guard to work for me. I'm not just going straight in with this in regards to this right here. I utilize that false point to come up this way, and I thrust. Okay. The other variant of this right here is I can also parry, as he says. Parry can be however cross with this. This can be very much like going to the other side. So I can come over here and I turn across. So just coming from this position, over, and then extend in. The interesting thing about this right here is if you do this enough, watch my body structure as you go sideways here, we might actually get a little bit more what we talked about last week about instabile. So all I'm trying to do here is keep this as balanced as possible. When I cover, it pulls me forward. And I have to return to stability. I find myself being pulled forward. So you can see right there, two ways of exchanging. Crossing up to this position right here, which stops if anything is coming on this side, over, thrust. I can also exchange, thrust. Cover, thrust. Those are your 2 points right there. The other portions right here, now, of course, this is us talking about this position as a guardia, not as a posta. Remember, if it's a posta, I might be on this side right here, strike, and I'm back in this position right here, which allows me to rechamber back up. I pass through that. But as a guardia, we have other options. So again, from this position of Tutta Porta di Ferro, we have this extension piece which allows us to push out the blade. By coming this way right here and allowing this, I am again essentially making a punta position, but all I'm doing right here is using that pulsativa aspect to rotate and strike through. If I add volta stabile to this, I have a lot more power. Striking in. Just like such. And you can see how my body's being pulled over this way. Again, what am I going into? Going into posta longa. Giving into that way. Okay? If I want a false, then strike, I can, utilizing a false edge, strike across. So we're now utilizing a false edge strike, so then instead of a true edge, going false, coming down with this. False, going to sottani, where it's just a strike towards the eyes and linger there, and then I can come right back down the line of fendente. You can already see here I'm using a variety of different footwork to use this position. Okay, so that right there is really basic concepts right here. And again, I'm just showing you a fendente, a sottani, a punta on either side of this. Of course, there's also a mazzani that you can utilize in this. Coming across, instead of just pushing straight forward this, I can also strike using a horizontal blow. So coming this way. And remember, mazzani are neck to knees. So I might strike through the leg here. Cross, and now I'm into the Venetian guard. On the opposite side of this, I have to turn and utilize a false edge on that. Of course, I can turn over. Remember, this is kind of taxing here, and I think it goes against what his doctrine is about crossing the arms. So utilizing a false edge mezzani here, back of the legs. And this is just me utilizing both the stability of the feet, keep myself as stable as possible. Let's talk about some other considerations about this right here. And that's one thing I'm going to do here as far as how these link together to other posta and how we may find ourselves in these positions. Okay? So Tutta Porta di Ferro we know is a pulsativa position right here. We know that it is good for receiving things so long as it might be a shorter sword. That it's not too long and that it is good, of good quality. That tells me that you're talking about being able to move up here, which means you have some type of kinetic force action against you. He also tells me that Fiore understands probably a concept similar to what they understand there as gravity, because coming up to meet something means that this thing right here is going to be facing it against somebody who is potentially stronger, of good quality. Maybe it's a good quality cover. Maybe talk about the material. Regardless, that's one of the parts that kind of comes down to this. How we may find ourselves in this position. I can be up in posta di donna alla soprana and drop down low into Tutta Porta di Ferro. We already know I come from posta di donna alla sinistra, strike, and find myself right here. This is a pulsing moment to allow me to reset into another spot, but I can use that as a spot just to be reset and then wait out of that and then play into that position. We might also find ourselves in a spot where, as I strike out with this, I come down to dente di cingaro, turn to dente di cingaro mezzana. I'm still focused this way, and as I turn this way, I am now in Tutta Porta di Ferro as far as the sword goes. It's me coming across, turning, and now I'm facing this direction. So from here, which means that we have the ability to there fight in multiple directions. This is an important piece here because I do not think for any shape or form right here that Fiore is having a one-on-one engagement only in mind. This to me tells me that he knows how to fight in multiple directions. Just because I end down here in dente di cingaro mezzana does not mean that I don't have somebody coming over this way, which means with a turn, I'm now activating this spot, which makes a lot of sense why I might be able to move in different directions. It also gives us a continuation right here, as if I'm facing off with an opponent that is head towards here, and anywhere within the spectrum right here. So I'm fighting here, working off, and then I can turn here, and now I'm back into the other side. I'm utilizing the combination between dente di cingaro mezzana and Tutta Porta di Ferro to fight between two different situations. With a passing of my feet, different options are made available to me. So that right there is really kind of talking about what this position really is, how I see it. Some basic uses of it as a guardia. It's easy to kind of see how this kind of works here in place. How we may make those positions out of other positions, and maybe a field situation here where, again, target on, striking, turning, back, and I'm basically able to fight and pulse into between two different directions. And that here is basically the overlook right here for the Tutta Porta di Ferro.
So as you can see with the video that, again, the Tutta Porta di Ferro is a quite dynamic position that you can utilize to transition to and from different areas, all the way up into posta di donna alla soprana, out to posta longa. It's a transitional spot that you can fight into and out of, and it has rotational nodes within it that allow you to operate quite quickly and simply to be able to get different offenses and defenses into different areas. The Tutta Porta di Ferro, as you saw, also utilizes, in my opinion, the structures of apprezzari that carry forth all the way into the sword and two-hand section and allow us to be able to play and work in different forms and fashions. This means that essentially we've had the groundwork already established for us from the day one on how to stand this way. If we recall what is said within the apprezzari section, Fiore tells us that the Porta di Ferro position within apprezzari is the position that we wait for an opponent, and then it's from there that we explode, and that it has all sorts of things that will bring the pain, if you will, against an opponent. The Tutta Porta di Ferro is no different. The only difference right here is that we are essentially taking it and arming it with a sword in the hands, which makes it special in that regards. So that's really the big thing when it comes down to this right here. The video stands for itself as far as all the observations that come with this. But again, I hope you also notice here about when you're holding the sword, how that becomes almost a rotational node, how the sword almost becomes like a wheel and spoke in ways to be able to cast and use the sword in different forms and directions. So again, that's all that really comes down and boils down to as far as utilizing the Tutta Porta di Ferro and how we can utilize it as a posta and a guardia. So with that being the case here, everybody, please, if you like this, like and subscribe, share with a friend out there. Looking to really continue with growing this channel, and really appreciating all the comments out there, especially ones out there looking at observations that we've had in regards to some of the Hope Federal Lab specials, regards to the sword caliber videos that we had a few months ago. Again, loving all the comments that come this way right here, because it helps me be able to kind of cater and tailor some of the training and observations I do, but also to the students that we have within the curriculum. So again, please share with people out there. We'd love to hear it and love to hear your thoughts. If you're new, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend out there. And don't forget, hit the bell so you get notified when new content drops out there. So with that being the case, everybody here, until I see you, please stay safe out there, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.